Somebody really wants to rewrite history and paint Meghan and Harry as ungrateful, difficult, impossible to please. But when you actually look at what this so-called new royal book reveals, it tells a completely different story. It exposes just how desperate the institution was to control them, contain them, and keep them within a structure that was never designed to protect them. A new book by Russell Myers, titled William and Catherine, the intimate inside story claims that Buckingham Palace even considered making Prince Harry the Governor-General of Canada in an attempt to keep him in the royal fold. Let that sink in. They were scrambling for months, according to former courtiers, trying to find a role for Harry and Meghan. Not because they were lazy, not because they had no value, but because the existing royal structure could not handle a modern, independent, globally influential couple who refused to be sidelined. The idea that Harry could become Governor-General of Canada sounds grand on paper. The Governor-General is the monarch's representative in the country, a Commonwealth nation with deep historic ties to Britain. But here is the detail conveniently glossed over by critics. The role must be filled by a Canadian citizen. Harry was never eligible. So why float it as an option? Was it a genuine proposal or a symbolic gesture meant to look generous while knowing it would never materialize? It feels less like opportunity and more like optics. According to the book, palace insiders claim that the options laid before Meghan and Harry show they were hardly left fending for themselves. But if that were true, why did every supposed solution fall apart? One source admits they spent months trying to work out a role, and every time they thought they had cracked it, there were reasons it could not work. Security implications in Africa, conflicts with existing roles, legal barriers in Canada. It was described as almost an impossible task. Impossible for who? Harry had spent a decade building the Invictus Games and working across the Commonwealth. Meghan had a proven global platform, years of advocacy experience, and strong ties to Toronto from filming Suits. She had lived in Canada for years. She understood the culture. She had charitable connections. They were not blank slates. They were two of the most recognizable and influential members of the royal family at the time. Yet somehow there was no workable role. The book also claims that nothing was ever good enough for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That narrative has been pushed for years. But let's examine it critically. What Meghan and Harry wanted was clarity, security, and the ability to earn their own income while still supporting the Queen. They proposed a half-in, half-out model. Continue to serve, continue to represent, but without relying entirely on public funds and without being trapped in a system that was actively leaking against them. Instead of meeting them with flexibility, the palace reportedly kept asking, "How do you want this to work? Do you have a tangible plan?" But insiders also admit they already knew the couple intended to sign commercial deals and that just wasn't going to work within the model. So was the question ever genuine? If the institution had already decided that financial independence was incompatible with royal service, then what exactly were Meghan and Harry supposed to propose? The truth is, they were trying to modernize a centuries-old structure. They were trying to do what younger generations expect from public figures: transparency, autonomy, ethical income streams. And instead of evolving, the system pushed back. Let's not forget the timeline. This was happening amid relentless tabloid attacks, racially charged headlines, and a complete lack of visible protection from the institution. Meghan was vilified for everything from holding her baby bump to closing a car door. Harry watched history repeat itself. He saw how media pressure destroyed his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, and he was not willing to let it happen again. When critics say they were offered everything and turned it down, they ignore the emotional and psychological context. Security was a real concern. Working across Africa raised safety issues. Canada required citizenship. Other roles were already assigned. Each idea collapsed under practical or political constraints. And here is the bigger issue. The monarchy has long struggled with what to do with the spare. Harry was always going to face structural limitations. The hierarchy is rigid. The future king and queen take centre stage. Others orbit around them. For years, Harry played his part with loyalty and dedication. But once he married a biracial American actress with her own voice, global following, and independent spirit, the old template no longer fit. The book centres on Prince William and Princess Catherine, and it subtly reinforces the idea that stability lies with them. But stability for the institution does not automatically mean fairness for everyone within it. When Meghan and Harry relocated to Montecito, California, it was framed as abandonment. In reality, it was survival and strategy. They built Archewell. They signed deals that gave them creative control. They produced documentaries, podcasts, and philanthropic initiatives. They achieved financial independence without asking British taxpayers for funding. That was always their stated goal. If anything, the palace's months of failed proposals show that the system was inflexible. It could not accommodate nuance. It could not handle a hybrid model. And rather than publicly admit that rigidity, it became easier to frame the couple as demanding. Another insider claims the three principal private secretaries from the households of the late Queen, then Prince Charles and Prince William, could not find a workable solution. Think about that. Three powerful royal offices, senior communications teams, months of discussion, and still no solution for two of the most high-profile members of the family. That does not sound like Meghan and Harry being impossible. That sounds like an institution unwilling to bend. There is also an undercurrent here that deserves attention. The suggestion that they were intent on signing commercial deals, as if that was some betrayal. Yet other royals have private incomes. Other royals benefit from duchies and inheritances. The difference is that Meghan and Harry wanted transparency and independence outside the traditional funding streams. The monarchy survives by adapting. It survived abdication. It survived scandal. It survived public scrutiny. But adaptation requires courage. In this case, adaptation would have meant acknowledging that a modern royal couple could serve part-time, represent the Commonwealth in innovative ways, and pursue ethical business ventures without undermining the crown. Instead, the narrative now suggests they were offered grand opportunities like Canada and Africa and simply rejected them out of dissatisfaction. But the fine print tells another story. Legal barriers, security concerns, institutional red lines. And here is what really stands out. If they were truly so difficult and impossible, why was there such an intense effort to keep them? Why spend months crafting roles? Why consider international appointments? Because their star power mattered. Their popularity mattered. Their global reach mattered. The attempt to recast that effort as proof of their ingratitude is revisionist. Meghan had built a life in Toronto long before royal life. She knew what independence looked like. She had her own income, her own platform, her own philanthropy. Harry had served 2 tours in Afghanistan and founded Invictus. These were not people looking for handouts. They were looking for a structure that respected their humanity and ambition. When that structure failed to materialize, they chose each other. They chose their mental health. They chose their children. They chose a new chapter in California. And the fact that years later books are still being written to frame that choice as petulance tells you everything about how threatening their autonomy was. The Governor-General idea was never a real solution. It was a symbol of an institution scrambling to maintain control while appearing generous. The Africa proposals were hampered by security. The commercial model was dismissed outright. In the end, the so-called impossible task was not finding a role for Harry and Meghan. It was reconciling a modern couple with an ancient hierarchy. They did not fail the system. The system failed them. And today, as they continue building their philanthropic and media empire from Montecito, their success speaks louder than any palace insider, quote, ever could.